Hey, it's Niels on Dynasty. Buy some silver, some platinum, some crystallized osmium. Be kind, helpful, grateful. It's better than being a jerk. And like, share, and subscribe. And I'm throwing out these banners because all this is, I'm not a financial advisor whatsoever. At all. Not it. Not me. Not going to happen. Sorry. So, having said that, let me get back here to share screen. It's going to be a bunch of crazy shit tonight just because I'm bored and why the hell not? Okay, here we go. This is a good one. This is about a dude who started PayPal. I think it was PayPal. And now he's building a space station with his money. Kind of cool. It's from Bluebird Originals.
Allow people to live at lower costs than they've done historically and for much longer times in space. And that's what VAST is set out to do.
VAST is a company that has the goal of creating the first private space station. I didn't know anything about them a few years ago, and then all of a sudden they burst onto the scene with a very ambitious and aspirational timeline.
Right now, VAST is 650 people. We are 10 people every week. More than 70% of that is in engineering and manufacturing.
VAST's whole approach has the potential to upend the space industry. It also has the potential to go incredibly wrong, and you can see a person light $1 billion on fire.
Can a crypto fortune fund a new space?
We are not really a space station company. We're an
question.
aspiring space station company until we have a space station on orbit.
So you obviously have an extremely aggressive timeline. How do you make it so that you are launching in just a few years?
We'll be doing it 5 times cheaper and 5 times faster than any other space station that has ever been built. We're investing $1 billion from our investor and founder, Jed McCaleb, to build Haven 1, to win the NASA competition, to replace the ISS.
NASA has officially decided that we are going to retire the International Space Station by 2030.
Through the Commercial LEO Development Program, NASA is working with industry partners to develop the first generation of commercial space destinations.
What NASA wants is to cede that control over to commercial companies. NASA has decided to become a customer.
A customer like those dogs.
By a fluffy little dog rocking the same necklace as you, then suddenly you've overdrafted. With Cash App, you're good. Get free overdraft coverage.
Man, you gotta love these
deposit
15-second commercials.
$300 each month.
Hate what he did.
Sadly, windshield chips.
VAST have taken the view that if we can get our
He's
product
a guy
into
who
space
invested $1
before
billion
anybody
of
else,
his own money.
it's impossible for them not to give us a
building his own
contract.
VAST
personal
is a
private
company
space-
founded in
space
2021
station.
by cryptocurrency billionaire Jed McCaleb. They hope to launch their first space station, Haven 1, in May of 2026. The plan is to launch the first module of their Haven 2 space station in 2028. That will then grow and expand into their final replacement for the ISS.
So this is the actual design. This is what you can expect Haven 1 to look like. We can thank one of our advisors, Peter Russell-Clark, which was for 25 years a designer at Apple.
Jed McCaleb has been very upfront that it's going to
Hey,
cost
what's up,
about
Leonard?
$1 billion to get Haven 1 into orbit by 2026, and he's committed to putting his own.
This guy is putting $1 billion of his own money to start a private space station, and he's launching the first part of it in May of 2026. $1 billion of his own money. That's almost like Batman.
money into that.
That is essentially dropping half of his net worth into this company.
I don't need this much money to live. My choices are like buy a lot of yachts
What's
or
up, Gerald?
whatever, like a lot of people, billionaires do. That isn't very interesting to me. Like what's interesting is actually like building things and like actually like changing the trajectory of humanity, which I think we can do here at VAST.
VAST has an incredibly ambitious
Keep an
timeline.
eye
having
on
only
that
been founded
name.
in 2021. I wouldn't say
Keep the name on that, an eye on that guy's name, Bast Space Station. If he goes public, invest in it because NASA will be renting space station space from this gentleman.
that just for a space company. I'd say it for any company that's
Bruce
wants to
Wayne
develop a
shit,
product
hell
of
yeah.
this sophistication. But there are a lot of people who've gone and drank the Kool-Aid or seen the potential, depending on who you speak to. Jed has no background in space.
I've been
Oh, by the way, Gerald, this guy who's throwing $1 billion at the space station, he got his $1 billion from the crypto market.
programmer for many years, like ever since I was a little kid. One of my original things was a file sharing thing. And then in around 2010, I discovered Bitcoin.
Jed is one of the most influential people in the crypto industry. He founded Mt. Gox in 2010, which became one of the first Bitcoin trading platforms. After about a year and a half, he sold a majority stake. 3 years later, that company collapsed. Jed, though, was not done with cryptocurrency. He co-founded a company called Ripple, which was a new blockchain. At one point, Ripple was the second biggest traded token after Bitcoin. Jed subsequently left that company, but still held a lot of the currency. He then decided that he was going to sell that currency almost all at once, which basically crashed the platform. After a long, tortuous legal negotiation, it was agreed that there would be a trading plan where Jed could sell down his tokens over time. It is our understanding that those sales netted Jed at least $2 billion. Michaela created Vast in 2021.
Vast, not Vast.
Small crew, aspirations for building an artificial gravity space station.
I think it's important that humans get off the planet and out into the solar system. People need a frontier. Otherwise, things start to feel very zero-sum.
The first real moves were when he bought Launcher.
Max Hote is an entrepreneur who started his own aerospace startup called Launcher. Was developing a rocket and an engine, as well as created a few test satellites. And they launched those satellites into orbit, but both of those satellites suffered some kind of failure once they reached space. This all raises the question if Vast is the one to create the next space station.
Other companies in the industry certainly have more of a space pedigree than Vast does. For example, Axiom Space, their previous CEO ran the International Space Station. Vast have done things that other companies have done in terms of putting in a viable product. Vast at this point is still essentially a giant science project.
The International Space Station took years of planning, over a decade to build, multiple partner nations to work together to put it into space. For Vast, kind of gone from 0 to 60 in a really short time frame, and they still need to develop the vehicles, the complicated technology, and the physics that all go into keeping humans alive on a space station in orbit.
See, this is the perfect example of how someone took his knowledge of a future currency, which is the crypto realm, and he got in early with Elon Musk and them getting into that early 2010s, late 2000s, made $2 billion and is investing that cryptocurrency capital that he made into real world applications that'll go for a very, very long time. Once he finishes this space station, he's going to make a lot of money. I think this is an inspiring story because anyone can do that, especially now, as Gerald will tell you, the crypto market's starting to run.
One of the key facilities
What's
or the
up,
heart
Mo?
of our manufacturing capability and vertical integration is the machine shop.
Okay.
So this is the team and the machine that turn raw material into parts of the shape we need to then integrate on Haven 1. This machine is a pretty big mill that can do large parts, and it's literally sculpting. So you start with a big piece of metal, and you basically carve it using a mill.
Actually, a friend of mine, he's one of the Economic Ninjas moderator, Pete the Sasquatch. He had a company doing this exact same thing 10 years ago. He sold that company to SpaceX because he was building parts to the SpaceX rocket engine using the same technology.
This is probably one of the flight parts of Haven 1 that will go to orbit.
This specific part will take days to make.
Yeah, 3 days. How long do you think it'll take?
Counts.
Around 3 days. 3 days? If we purchase it, maybe 6 months, and then sometime you're chasing it and it takes 8 months.
There's been a recent vertical integration trend in the space industry, led predominantly by SpaceX and Blue Origin. Rather than source your components, you build everything in-house. I'm assuming this is some kind of hatch.
There's not a lot of providers or market for buying space station hatch. This is a clear item that you need to develop in-house.
Vast are hiring people every day for every unit across their industry. Like living legend, Drew Feldstall, the man worked for NASA for 23 years, was the head of the astronaut crew. He actually worked on repairing the Hubble telescope in space before he retired. So Drew accepting to come and work on Vast and help be a cheerleader for the company shows that he certainly believes that they have a real shot of producing a genuine product.
Having lived in space for 6.5 months, I have a good understanding of what works in space and what doesn't. So what we developed here for our crew members is what I believe to be a more comfortable environment to sleep in, a system that applies constant pressure over our bodies so that we can experience sleep that's similar to what we experience on Earth.
I could fall asleep here.
We pretty much take it all. Fridges and dishwashers,
Hey,
couches,
Mo Jump.
mattresses, same day notice for 3 weeks.
So a key technology we need as a space station company is the ability to handle micrometeorite strike that might happen. So small object in low Earth orbit that can arrive and potentially create a safety risk for the crew.
Right, because just one tiny speck could be...
Yes, and then after a strike like that, you might have to abandon the space station, you might have to repair it. And this has been designed so that if a projectile arrives, let's say at 5 kilometers per second, arrive at a certain size, can puncture this layer, it reach this other layer, and then you can see the back. This is the representation of this pressure vessel was not punctured.
I am definitely the skeptic when it comes to the space industry. You know, oftentimes I'll joke that I'm a CGI reporter. The only thing that companies have to show are CGI of what they're going to build. I saw actual hardware. That is sometimes a rarity.
Yeah, this is neat. In my opinion, this is the best part of the space station, right? Is getting to look out the window.
This actual window there will go and be mounted on the qualification primary structure. And if you'd like, you can, try it.
It's the closest I'm going to get to space.
So we don't have the vacuum of space outside you, but you can get a sense.
Haven 1 is still in its relative infancy, but you can see money being spent everywhere at that facility. They're tripling their floor space at the moment. It's incredible to see the speed that they're working at. They want to save the time, not the money.
So just to create this article, we created 3 times more than we needed, so that if we had a problem, we could quickly make another ring, for example.
Private industry needs to act fast. I would say comparing the cultures of NASA to any private sector company is really not an apples to apples comparison. Government tends to be much slower in decision making.
It could be a very good thing that they're doing this way. It could show other companies that you don't have to, work out all the kinks before you can run, essentially. Or it could be a giant example in hubris.
Eventually, NASA is going to select the finalists
That's
for the
Mo's new
commercial
girlfriend on
LEO
TV.
development contract in 2026. Many of the competitors of VAST have been working on their space stations for much longer. The big one is Axiom, Blue Origin, Voyager, and then VAST. The NASA CLD contracts could be very lucrative for commercial companies, potentially worth billions of dollars.
So for us, it's a matter of existence to win that competition. We don't think that without NASA as an anchor customer, right now, the market is there for us to exist after that.
And I think that goes to show just how valuable NASA contracts still are. So as vibrant and as influential as the commercial space economy has become, NASA is still the biggest player in town. But when it comes to getting
commercial space economy, remember those words.
Anything into space right now, SpaceX is kind of your bread and butter. And VAST has multiple contracts with SpaceX. It definitely caught the attention of the space industry. It's one thing to say that you're going to build a space station, and it's another to say, hey, I've actually secured a launch contract to build this station and a contract to send people to it as well.
We obviously are a customer of SpaceX. We pay them money to get us to our space station, but strategically and long term, we fully align with them, and we are all in on that relationship because we want to be joining them on the quest to Mars. And we want to be contributing to that.
VAST is leveraging various hardware that SpaceX has perfected over the last few years. The biggest one being SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. It's the most prolific rocket in the world, and it's the main rocket that SpaceX uses to launch satellites and people into orbit.
I got something to say about that. That's fixing to change. NASA's working on a nuclear rocket engine powered with nuclear, kind of like a micro reactor rocket engine. And they got the design from the Russians. And I did a report last year that the Russians did 4 tests, 3 blew up, 4th one was successful. And NASA took that over and is running with it. So we will have within 10 to 15 years nuclear-powered rocket engines.
Haven 1 is designed to fit
Hey, Mike.
on top of one single Falcon 9 rocket. And then once that space station is in orbit, VAST will be using a SpaceX crew capsule to launch their own crew of astronauts to the Haven 1 space station to make sure it's viable and that it is working properly.
We asked Jed and Max if they own Teslas, having seen them all over the parking lot.
I love it. That's why I put the bacon up there, baby.
Max drives
Bacon,
the
bacon,
Cybertruck,
bacon.
and Jed, got a Model 3, so make of that what you will.
So we're going to see the actual article now.
Yeah, the
wow.
qualification primary structure in right here. So this started as a flat panel. It was milled, it was rolled, and we looked at the window. So this metal piece is actually bolted in.
Mhm.
So we are removing this, and then we're adding the window right there, so we can test the window and the pressure
we
test.
saw.
The one that we saw. And then on the other half is where the hatch goes.
Okay.
And so then you have a full primary structure with the hatch and the window ready for proof testing.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of the future of NASA. There's a lot of concern that these space stations won't be ready by 2030. It's a very complicated type of endeavor, obviously dictated by very complicated physics. It remains to be seen exactly how that's all going to shake out.
VAST is doing its own moonshot, if you'll forgive the pun, that it can put a space station in space within 5 years, and the owner is willing to spend his own money to do it. If it works, it will be a testament to private endeavor. If it fails, he will have let a lot of his own money on fire.
What do you guys think about that? I don't know about the doggy bacon treats, but I'm damn sure I'll kick someone's ass for some real bacon. So what do y'all think about that report? Privately funded, not house, but space station, $1 billion plus. And he's going to make billions with an S. That is what you call a long-term freaking business opportunity, in my personal opinion. Ooh, here's another NASA. Oh, wait, no. We're going to change this up. Here we go. You guys will love this one. For all you patriots. For all you patriots out there.
Back to the breaking news we brought you off the top. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard declassifying documents that show a, quote, treasonous conspiracy at the highest levels of the Obama administration to manufacture a narrative that Russia was trying to influence the 2016 presidential election. New York Congressman Mike Lawler joins us now. Congressman, it's great to have you on the program. This just broke about an hour or so ago that DNI Gabbard released these documents. It is incredibly fascinating. To some extent, Congressman, even as early as earlier this week, we broke down and asked the question of whether or not there's not enough focus on President Obama when it comes to Russia, Russia, Russia. What Gabbard is sharing with us now is the day by day and minute by minute change in the intelligence community reports after they go to the White House to meet with Obama, wherein they change the narrative of Russia's involvement in our election.
Well, it's extremely disturbing at every level. And the fact is, President Obama needs to answer for this immediately. There needs to be a very clear and unequivocal answer
What's up,
to
pseudoscience?
how this happened and why exactly his administration, in concert with the intelligence community, was changing reports to make it appear as though that Russia interfered in our elections and to further this entire scam that has been perpetrated on the American people to undermine his successor, President Trump. It is just fundamentally wrong. And everything that the American people have seen over the last decade since Donald Trump came onto the national political scene, it has been one event after the next in which Democrats and the intelligence community and the Department of Justice, institutions that are supposed to uphold our democracy, have frankly sought to undermine it at every turn.
And to some extent, I think for many of the audience listening, it is not maybe a revelation they haven't thought, heard, or researched on their own before. I think what's different now is that this is coming from the Director of National Intelligence, and there's specific information on a day-by-day basis of how this changed. And just for the record, so the audience knows, I mean, it looks like the critical moment was around December 9th of 2016. Prior to that occasion, most of the intelligence community was saying no Russia involvement. Around December 9th or December 8th, they go into a meeting with President Obama, come out, and an entirely different message emerges from the intelligence community about Russia's involvement in this election. And let us hope, Congressman, this is the start. And we should have already started, and we have started, but this is not the end of searching for accountability on Russia.
There needs to be accountability on this, and frankly, there has not been for years. You obviously had a special counsel appointed after James Comey was fired as FBI director. You get a special counsel that comes in, does a nearly 2-year investigation looking into every aspect of this. And the fact that this information was not uncovered, the fact that it was not part of the comprehensive report that made clear there was not Russian interference and that President Trump did not do anything wrong. And ultimately, those that were engaged in this, both in 2016 and again in 2020, when they tried to say that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, once again, they need to be held accountable. This is not how our elections should be decided. This is not how our government should be run. Those who have the highest levels of power and intelligence access need to be held accountable if they abuse it. And that's what it appears like happened here.
All right, really quickly here, Congressman, you're a New York congressman. Is it possible that the city of New York is going to elect a guy to mayor who has said he looks to abolish private property in Zohran Mamdani?
Sadly, so long as there are multiple candidates in the race, it looks very likely that he will be the next mayor of New York City. You need a one-on-one race. And the fact is, what he is talking about is Marxist. It is communist. He wants to seize property. He wants to seize the means of production. He wants to ban capitalism and billionaires. He wants to tax people based on their race. And whether or not they live in a white neighborhood. This is absolute insanity. It will lead to the mass exodus of New York. New York City is the financial capital of the world. It will not only be destructive to New York, it'll be destructive to America. He must be defeated at the ballot box in November. And that requires everybody putting their egos aside and recognizing whoever has the best pathway, everybody's got to get behind that person.
All right, Congressman Lawler, thank you so much. Hey, it's...
Well, that's a good, interesting thought. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, everything looks that way, blah, 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 blah. Guest is looking at, and let me see if I can't find these young ladies here real quick. I just discovered them a little, and man, are they awesome. They break it on down. I didn't even know what I was fighting. I just knew I was fighting something big for decades. And then I found these ladies, and they were like, introduced me to what the hell I was fighting, because they've been fighting it too. I mean, I'm looking for their site right now because I want to like maybe share a little bit of their shit. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Hold on a second. I gotta get rid of this. All right. Damn it, man. Another commercial. Hold on a second, guys. There we go. Okay. Put the redhead back on. Yeah, she only works for Vast, man. That was the only thing I had from Vast Corporation. Here's your replacement. But this lady's just as if not, a lot more smarter, just not redheaded. But
his first conviction in
we'll deal with it.
2009, Lord Peter Mandelson stayed at his house. Mandelson is the current British ambassador to the United States and was part of Tony Blair's political machine when he was prime minister. That should begin to give you a little more insight into how all of the sound and fury about the Epstein files is obscuring a much deeper battle that is going on. Most people think that the Epstein story is just about sex trafficking and compromising politicians and billionaires with underage girls. Well, that's certainly part of it. But if you're fixated on that, you'll miss Trump's history-making moves. Because the real battle is Donald Trump's commitment to free the United States from the empire's control which is with the classic imperial tools of war and money. Epstein wasn't just running a blackmail operation. He was a key financial player in maintaining British imperial banking domination in the world. This is Susan Kokinda, and 1 year ago today, I was on the floor of the Republican convention in Milwaukee as part of the Michigan delegation, where I was privileged to watch Donald Trump launch his triumphant march to a second term as president. With over 50 years of political organizing against the modern-day British Empire under my belt, I can tell you that those 4 days in July, coming just after Trump's miraculous escape from assassination, marked a turning point in history. Now add to that a recently released interview with Russian President Putin, and you'll see emerging the potential for a coming world in which nations are sovereign, economically and strategically, and in which empires, today's globalists, are relegated to the dustbin of history. So in this midweek update, I'm going to look at 3 critical developments. How Putin's recent comments about the British and French empires provide the necessary context for understanding Trump's latest moves on Ukraine. Epstein's role as a financial player in maintaining British imperial banking domination, and Trump's political and economic counteroffensive. So let's start with Putin's comments that provide some crucial context for what Trump is doing. Released interview, Putin dropped an observation about one of the most important elements of post-World War II history. He said, in some former colonial empires like Britain or France, they consider us responsible for the collapse of their colonial empires. And this historical negativity persists. The fact is, after World War II, the United States, along with Russia in some ways, worked toward the destruction of these empires and worked to assist the colonies in getting their independence and sovereignty. Now, that's the same outlook that Franklin Roosevelt had for the post-war period, an outlook which was sabotaged when British puppet Harry Truman.
Also, if you look at the history of World War II, speaking of imperial control, it has been proven that a day and a half before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the radar stations in Midway dismantled. That was done by someone in authority that has never been discovered who it was. And it is very well known historically that England wanted and needed America in the war. So as far as imperialistic control, I'm almost positive that they had something to do with the dismantling of that radar station, thus allowing the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, which got us into that devastating war to start with. So when they talk about the control factor of the imperialistic regime, the they who control things, here it is.
Instead, through America's might in with the British imperial and geopolitical schemes instead. And Putin kept coming back to the geopolitical underpinnings of how Russia was treated and lied to in the post-Soviet period. And he made clear that only sovereignty will protect Russia. He said, it became clear that until we assert ourselves as an independent sovereign power capable of defending our future, we will not be respected. Now, Trump understands that, and he's approached the question of settling the Ukraine war from the standpoint of treating Russia as a sovereign nation with legitimate interests, not as a perpetual enemy to be threatened and challenged. Look at his big announcement on Monday from that standpoint. It's not a capitulation to the neocons or a betrayal base. It's an attempt to end the bloodletting by setting a deadline which is actually being echoed by some in Russia, and shifting the payments for weapons deliveries to Ukraine onto the backs of the Europeans, who are the ones who are still pushing Ukraine to continue the war. Now, of course, the British press played their typical role of trying to heighten the US-Russia tensions by taking recent leaked Trump quotes out of context, as this BBC headline shows. But the White House yesterday shut that down, and Trump himself responded to the BBC's prodding that he is done with Putin with a hard no and said, no, I'm not done with him. Russia also took aim at the real culprit with this TASS headline. As for the other side of Trump's big announcement, the threat of potential secondary sanctions against Russia's trading partners, which is being pushed by perpetual war hawk Senator Graham, look at what is actually happening. Yesterday, Senate Majority Leader John Thune put Graham's Russian sanctions package on the back burner. He said, "It sounds like right now the president is going to attempt to do some of this on his own. If at some point the president concludes that it makes sense and adds value and leverage that he needs to keep in those negotiations to move the bill, then we'll do it." In other words, let Trump be Trump.
Free cookie for life.
Woo, free
This is why I
cookies.
canceled my DoorDash subscription.
Man, I'm signing up.
After months spending way
No more cooking.
And as for
girls.
all the chatter that
Free
Trump has capitulated to the neocons and the globalists, why did Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth cancel all Pentagon participation at the Aspen Security Forum, with the Pentagon explicitly citing concerns about globalist influence? The elite British press is playing a major role at Aspen. The Financial Times, which just tried to blow up US-Russian tensions, is moderating 5 panels. And The Economist, the mouthpiece for the City of London, is moderating 4. So now let's talk about the deeper significance of Jeffrey Epstein. Barbara Boyd, Mike Benz, and others have documented his role as a British intelligence asset. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know about his perversions. But I want to look at his financial career from a different standpoint, how he was embedded in the unraveling of the U.S. economy in the decades following the 1971 decision to take the dollar off the gold reserve standard. That ending of the post-war Bretton Woods system led to successive waves of bank deregulation that then opened the door to the speculative booms and busts of the 80s and 90s, and then the one in 2008.
Very important.
Over that
subject.
period, the traditional American commercial banking system was destroyed and replaced by the equivalent of a financial parasite, which was directed by the City of London and Wall Street. Epstein was in the middle of all of that. From 2000 to 2007, he was president of Liquid Funding Limited, an early innovator in mortgage-backed securities and other exotic derivatives. His company was partly owned by Bear Stearns, one of the most notorious players in this wild west of speculative bubbles. And between them, they helped ignite the 2008 financial crisis. And here's where Lord Mandelson comes in. According to a J.P. Morgan report written to cover their own asses on their relationship to Epstein, Mandelson and Epstein were in touch with each other on matters relating to the Federal Reserve in 2008 and on later congressional debates on the Dodd-Frank bill and the Volcker rule, both of which led to a continuation of the speculators' regime. Here's the relevant section of the J.P. Morgan report. Quote, "Can Jess Staley of J.P. Morgan send me an email on issues Ray Dodd's Volcker?" This was from Peter Mandelson to Epstein in 2010. And not only that, Mandelson stayed in Epstein's home when Epstein was serving time for his first conviction. Epstein was part and parcel of the network of British-run influencers who use money, connections, and sex to maintain their central bank-run grip on the United States. And now Mandelson is the British ambassador to the United States. This is a lot bigger than blackmailing politicians, as disgusting and criminal as those activities are. Now, put this in another light. The well-sourced John Solomon said that the FBI has quietly launched an investigation into a decade of Democratic Party and deep state antics, from Russian collusion to Jack Smith, opening the door for the appointment of a special prosecutor to examine whether the well-documented episodes amount to a criminal conspiracy to meddle in 3 elections to the benefit of the Democrats and the detriment of President Donald Trump. This runs the full gamut of deep state activities, which will prove more about the inner workings of the deep state than a list of Epstein's clients. This is why Trump's fight with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is so significant. While Charlie Kirk and his friends were in their Epstein frenzy this weekend, Trump unleashed his key economic advisors in a frontal assault against Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Whether it was Treasury Secretary Bessent and Peter Navarro pounding on Powell's refusal to lower interest rates and on the Fed's tariff derangement syndrome, or OMB head Russ Vought.
Ask yourself this question. Who are we paying money to with unduly high interest rate on that money? So in other words, someone out there, the they, is making a lot of money off of this interest rate that we have on our high debt. And it sounds like it's the imperialist. And that's why Powell's not lowering interest rates, because every month they're making hundreds of billions of dollars extra profit.
But blowing the whistle on the Versailles on the Mall Fed remodeling scandal, or the head of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, putting out an official statement hoping for Powell's resignation. The battle lines have been drawn. Imagine if Powell quit and Donald Trump had a Federal Reserve head who would partner with him. Having a cooperating Fed chair is critical to Trump's economic revolution, which, despite the current sabotage from the Fed, is accelerating in a breathtaking way. Manufacturing jobs are returning, energy production is surging, and we see the beginnings of a real industrial renaissance. Trump and his economic team celebrated that yesterday in Pennsylvania at the Energy and Innovation Summit. President Trump and Senator David McCormick heralded the announcement of $92 billion in new energy and industry investments in Pennsylvania.
Also, another thing that happened in Pennsylvania, I did, but there was 3 politicians from a town in Pennsylvania that were arrested for election fraud in the 2024 local mayor election in their town. And that always leads upstream. It doesn't go further downstream, it goes upstream. So you're probably going to hear more about Pennsylvania corruption busts in the near future.
Yeah. Treasury Secretary Bessent declared the Rust Belt is no more, and nuclear energy was front and center, with Westinghouse announcing that it will build 10 new modern nuclear power plants over the next 10 years.
Dudes. NEEOKLO. Yes, Westinghouse is a big one. And you just heard her say what Westinghouse is going to be doing with nuclear energy. America owns the energy markets of the world. We are pouring heavy freaking money into nuclear. Every corporation out there and new ones starting are going to do nuclear. Small modular reactors and micronuclear reactors. I've been saying it for almost 6 months.
And create 15,000 jobs in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Hey, what's up, Jay?
This is what the imperial elite fear the most: a United States of builders and the emergence of a new alliance of producers and workers that will redefine the political landscape. Brandon Bishop of the National Building Trades spoke to this summit, declaring,
Mr. President.
Competition.
It's an honor to be here today representing North America's building trades unions and our 3 million members.
I'm one of
especially
those members.
Thousands of highly skilled workers across Pennsylvania who are ready to deliver on all of the historic investments being announced here today.
Why do you think I'm
All the
pushing it
projects
so hard for
discussed
so
here
long,
today
baby?
Aren't just about energy and innovation. They're about
There's
job
method
creation.
to my madness.
And all of us in the building trades stand ready to deliver. If you want the highest quality, most productive, long-term labor certainty, partner with us from day one. Don't just build with us. Stay with us and maintain it for decades.
that alliance of builders, producers, and workers is the American system. And that is what the City of London and the global financier elite have been trying to stamp out for over 200 years. Peter Navarro recently did a beautiful series of posts on the American system. He said, the early GOP was the party of tariffs and industry. From Lincoln to McKinley and into the 20th century, the Republican Party fought for American workers. Trump has revived that GOP, reconnecting it to its pro-worker, pro-sovereignty roots. And then he said, the American system is about building things in America, by Americans and for Americans. It's about using tariffs to protect our industries, investing in infrastructure to move our goods, and creating a national bank to finance our growth. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did.
Creating a national bank to finance our growth.
Boy, howdy.
That would be a stake through the heart of the British central banking system. And the British elite and their ambassador Mandelson
What's up,
understand
Thomas?
what Trump is doing better than most Americans. He's intent on dismantling their entire system of financial control. That's why they're responding with everything they've got: war threats, financial manipulation, and yes, focusing you on the Epstein files rather than on the total strategy to win the war. So here's what's really happening. Trump is leading a second American revolution, this time against the financial empire that's controlled our economy for over a century. The Epstein story isn't just about sex trafficking. It's about how the elites use every tool at their disposal to maintain financial control. The Ukraine crisis isn't just about territorial disputes. It's about whether sovereign nations can exist or whether we'll all be vassals or pawns of a global empire. Trump understands this, Putin understands this, we understand this, and increasingly the American people are beginning to understand it. The sound and fury about the Epstein files is designed to keep you focused on the salacious details while missing the bigger picture. The real battle is between the empire of money and the sovereignty of nations. Trump is fighting that battle every day, and he's winning. But he can't have people sitting in the barracks getting whipsawed back and forth by media-generated reports of defections and demoralization. That's why your support for Promethean Action is so crucial, because we are out there leading the fight. We give you battle reports, not just commentary. And paying members are the backbone of our movement. Because of your support, Barbara and I will soon be launching a new live show, and our subscribers will be the first to know. So join the fight and stay focused. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe.
Wow, see, and that's what she just said. You don't need to be caught up in what you're actually caught up in. Actually, yesterday, he said, hey, you know what? Go ahead and release the files. And he told that to Pam Bondi. He goes, anything that you can release them. And he said it on public television just yesterday, Thomas. And if you'd have watched this whole show, that's not what any of this is about. That's just some of the salacious details to keep you off target. Yeah, it could. It could. I don't believe it, but it could. But anyhow, now we're going to another cool story. Where are we going here now? Let me see. We're just doing, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this. Let me share screen. I gotta stop sharing that screen so I can share a new screen. Share screen. Let's see, this is a real quickie. They were talking about Britain and Russia fighting Britain for its sovereignty over the imperialist control and why America and Russia are actually more friendly than we thought. Here is the reason why. Russia sold Alaska to the United States on March 30th, 1867, with the formal transfer of the territory taking place on October 18th, 1867. Purchase price of $7.2 million. The sale of Alaska was finalized in signing of the Treaty of Secession. While the treaty was signed in March, logistics delays, particularly concerning funding in Congress, pushed the formal transfer till October. The purchase was largely motivated by Russia's desire to avoid potential conflict with Great Britain and to recoup some of its financial loss from the Crimean War. The U.S., under the leadership of the Secretary of State William S. Seward, saw the acquisition as strategically valuable, particularly expanding the U.S. Presence in the Pacific. So Russia intentionally, yeah, exactly. Russia intentionally sold Alaska to us. What's up, Emilian? Russia intentionally sold Alaska to us so they wouldn't be selling it to England, because they, even back in 1867, didn't want to capitulate to England's imperialistic control of the financial markets of the world. And if you look at England and the East Indies Company from back in the 14th century onward till today, it's owned countries. That's a part of the imperialistic control that they're talking about. You take care and have a great night's sleep, my friend. We actually should be very, very, very good friends, Thomas, America and Russia. But that's another story. And now let's go back to NASA. NASA or NASA. Depends on what part of the country you live in, I imagine. This is kind of cool here. This is from Scott Manley, 1.8 million subscribers. I'll give him a thumbs up. Get some volume going here.
Hello, it's Scott Manley here. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about NASA's research into lifting body aircraft, which led to the Dream Chaser. That is, aircraft which don't have wings that effectively generate all the required lift from airflow over the body. Well, this week, they made a big announcement which went in completely the opposite direction. They announced they're planning to build a full-scale airliner using high-aspect, big, extra-long wings to demonstrate new aerodynamic technology, which will make more efficient airliners. This is a collaboration with Boeing, which is under a Space Act agreement, even though it's actually about
very much so, Thomas.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration, by the way, for those of you who are wondering why NASA spends money on airliners. This is going to be $425 million that gets paid to Boeing as they hit various milestones, and Boeing will have to spend, well, they estimate $725 million of their own money. I won't be surprised if that turns out to be more. But ultimately, Boeing wants to come out of this with a more efficient airliner, which will help them in the market, because while having a more efficient aircraft is great from an environmental impact, which makes them more green, the green that the airlines care about is the money they are spending on all that aviation fuel. And a 10% reduction is a pretty big deal. That's what they're expecting. If you have watched aviation for the last 30 years, you'll notice that all the planes you used to fly now have little wingtip devices. And those cost millions of dollars to fit, but they reduce the drag by about, a few percent. It's enough to make a difference
What's
to
up,
the operating
deplorable?
cost of an airline. That's why everybody does it these days. So anyway, this is called the Transonic Truss-Braced Wing Demonstrator. So first of all, it's a high aspect wing. That means that the wing chord is like the length of the wing from the front to the back, and then the span is the length of the wing going out. So aspect is the ratio of those numbers. So as you go from a low aspect, which is like a short, stubby, long wing, high chord wing, to make a long, thin wing, the area can remain the same, but the aspect changes. And it turns out that high aspect wings, well designed, will have better drag properties. They'll generate more lift. That's why you have gliders using these big, long wings so that they can soar on the thermals without any engine power. In technical terms, apparently it works that they reduce the induced drag, which is the drag that you generate as you're generating lift, whereas parasitic drag is the type of drag you generate which doesn't generate lift. So this reduces the drag on that and helps you not only fly for less power, it also, in theory, helps you fly higher.
Yep.
Take a look at the U-2, for example. It has very long wingspan. In fact, so long it has a hard time landing because it's so light. So anyway, airliners haven't used these big, long, high aspect wings, mostly for all sorts of reasons. So the design that's popular are these like box, cantilever designs, which are low wing and they spread out, they're swept to provide better transonic performance, but they're very thick because they have to transfer the loads all the way from the tip all the way to the body. And the thickness of the wings is actually it has its own advantages because it means the wings are thick enough that they can put fuel tanks inside.
You like his accent?
And since a lot of the weight of an aircraft when flying is the fuel, that actually helps even more because if you've got the fuel in the wing, you don't need to figure out how to transfer the lift from the wing to the fuel because it's already there. These very long aspect ratio wings are too thin to really maintain or to contain huge amounts of fuel. They require all sorts of new technologies to be able to make them sufficiently long and thin, and they can only really get the load capabilities by adding in this big, long truss. So the design sort of resembles what would happen if you took a passenger airliner and crossed it with a Cessna 172, where you've got the truss coming up and the big wing, except that the wing is just comically long. We have actually seen airline designs in the past, way in the distant past, right? In France, there was an aircraft called the Uriel de Bois, which used a truss-braced high-aspect design, and it was more efficient than the other options. And at the time, I think Air France actually ordered a few of them. And at some point, everyone decided, no, wait, everyone wants to go faster. Let's just cancel that order and buy jets instead. They did actually have a jet, Dubois, but it never made it off the drawing board. So, yes, speed was the sort of the problem or the constraining factor. They didn't want to go slower. And so a lot of research that has been done on this wing in the last 10 years or so has been in altering the sweep, adjusting its properties, making sure it doesn't flutter so they can fly at like Mach 0.8, comparable to like a 737. Another problem with these long, high aspect wings is that they basically are too long for existing airports as they're designed. We're also already getting to aircraft plane wing limits that are requiring some interesting design choices. If you look at the 777X, it has wingtips which are quite long that fold up so it can actually fit into its legal gate size without having to go to something bigger and larger. That gives it more lift when it's flying, but lets it fit into the space. And another reason why aircraft were using these big, thick wing designs is because material science and engineering was sort of geared towards that design for a very long time. It took like a pure research group like NASA to actually go in and solve all the problems in their wind tunnels at Langley and at Ames, and of course in their computational fluid dynamics systems, where they modeled these designs and optimized them. These trusses aren't just load-bearing supports, they are also altering the aerodynamics of the system so that they can generate lift and cancel out drag or minimize drag in that area. This design, they did a lot of testing over the last 10 years. The origin of this design actually goes back to NASA's Sustainable Flight Program, which looked at all sorts of different technologies and took design proposals from a number of manufacturers. Like Northrop Grumman, of course, said, look, we can take a flying wing design and put passengers inside it. And that is a radical and cool concept. But NASA didn't go that way. They liked Boeing's design because it can use a lot of existing technology, and they are really just modifying the wing. In fact, this design that Boeing has spec'd out, I believe they're called the VS1 and the VS2, and they both use fuselage segments or fuselage based on the MD-90, right? McDonnell Douglas 90 from the 1990s, which wasn't a hugely successful plane, but they had the hardware in-house, and the VS1 would fit like 130 to 160 passengers. The VS2 would be bigger, would be 180 to 210, and apparently they would require sufficiently different wing designs that they would need to be optimized for each aircraft. So the Sustainable Flight Program also looked at a whole bunch of other things. It looked at, first of all, it looked at like synthetic fuels. It looked at new engineering and design capabilities that might reduce mass and or reduce surface drag. It looked at new control surfaces which are seamlessly integrated with the wing, so there is no break in the surface. Control surfaces that can curve rather than just fold. So some of these things may ultimately make it onto the flight demonstrator, but I think initially they are going to be working with a pure wing with jet engines. Like Boeing, another part of their truss, this program, this concept came from the Sugar Volt, right? It was a subsonic, ultra green aircraft research, and their design had this wing design. It also had jet turbines and electric engine or electric power, which could be used to drive these engines during certain phases of flight, and also apparently could recover energy from the gas turbines, so they could charge up those batteries during certain portions of flight and have the battery power available. And they figured out that between the improvements in the drag and the improvements in the other technologies and the engines, they could get a 10 to 30% improvement in fuel efficiency. And that is huge. That is world-changing. Flying aircraft is one of those technologies where it's really resistant to not using hydrocarbon fuels because the energy density of these fuels is so much higher than batteries. Cars are a problem that were solved more or less because you can just put in a lot more batteries and have more powerful engines. And great, we have viable electric cars for 90% of the applications for which they're used. Aircraft, on the other hand, I fly an aircraft with a.
That's the new plane NASA is looking at, and they've shown that it's. This is for Callie, it's my love. They've shown it's between 10. It'll save between 10 and 30% of the fuel expense in flying. So once they prove that, a lot of the airliners are looking at it. So you'll probably see airplanes out there that look like that in the next 3 to 5 years.
215 horsepower engine, and that doesn't
business opportunity
sound like much. My minivan has more power than my plane, but that plane is running at 200 plus horsepower for a very long time, whereas that minivan is only running at 200 and something horsepower when I'm flooring it, trying to take off from the lights and showing that person, the so-called muscle car, that my minivan can beat them. Yes, it does happen. So like aviation, they're running at a more or less very high power settings for a very long part of the flight. And that doesn't work in the same way as like a hybrid car, where when you're hitting the brakes, you're recovering energy and then you're putting that energy back in when you're accelerating. The real viable long-term way of making aviation more green is to have synthetic fuels, which if you can get approved, which they can get mass produced, you can take sun, put them into algae ponds, and somehow get out after the algae, which can be processed down into the kind of hydrocarbons which can be burned in jet fuel. So yeah, like biofuels are great. They work on paper. You can do the math, but they're going to be a very long time coming. For a start, they're going to be more expensive. And secondly, regulatory agencies are incredibly risk averse. It's going to take a long time for them to be very sure that they're going to risk huge numbers of passengers with 100% biological fuel. Like just this year, we finally had an unleaded aviation fuel approved for aircraft in the US. It took so damn long for this thing to get finally approved by the FAA. Synthetic fuels may actually come, and they may actually help improve, the impact. Electric planes, they do exist. Things like the Pipistrel trainer, which will fly for an hour. And I don't think I've ever had a training flight that lasted less than an hour. I saw a story last week about someone that took a 1940s design de Havilland Beaver. And I don't know, the Beaver, it's this old bush plane, it's all metal, and it is tough as nails. Apparently, I've read it's the only plane that came direct from the factory, which included performance specs for flying with a canoe strapped to your landing gear. But somebody made an electric version of that. Flies for an hour, it carries passengers for an hour, and then it has to land. They're only allowed to fly for they have to have a 30-minute buffer in their power, so they can't fly very far. There are places where electric planes might work. For example, I see FedEx, they have to pick up packages at Petaluma at 6 p.m. every day, fly back to Oakland. That's like a 20-minute flight, if that. But they have to do this to avoid all the traffic because they want to make sure the packages get there in time for the flight that leaves for Memphis or whatever at 7. So yeah, this is a big part of NASA's whole program, and it's going to be fascinating to watch this happen. I hope that Boeing doesn't screw it up. There's real importance to Boeing as a company to make this thing work. Fuel efficiency is hugely important to aviation. Like if you look, the whole history of passenger jet evolution has really been driving those efficiency numbers up. The early 707, if you look at passenger miles per gallon, you would get about 45 miles per gallon per passenger over the how many 100 the 707 had. These days, that 45 has gone up to like 120 for the 787s and so on and so forth. So this isn't just like some green thing. This is absolutely what you need to keep an airline manufacturer competitive in the world market. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.
I'm not Sky Manley. I don't fly that often. So what do you guys think? Pretty variety range of subjects discussed tonight. Hope it was enlightening a little bit. You guys want to add to the discussion other than screwing aerodynamics? You do? What do you want to add, Gerald? I can throw some cooking shows up. I've got actually a whole watch list of cooking shows. But I don't have the facilities to cook right now, so I don't. Oh, you fly? Yeah, I know you fly a lot. Actually, you fly enough for both of us, plus 3 other people. You should get frequent flyer miles when you fly. You probably get a couple free flights there, Gerald. Dude, I was talking to Gerald about this the other day, man. When I get a house, I'm going to be baking. There's always going to be homemade chocolate chip cookies and homemade peanut butter cookies in a jar somewhere in the kitchen. Those are my 2 favorite homemade from scratch cookies. Of course, it takes a little longer making it from scratch, but they're so much better. So much better. Sorry, I'm packing a bowl right now. My hands are filled. So does anyone want to come up on stage and fill us with some information? Suggest a video, topic of conversation, new purchase or acquisition might want to discuss, any scientific knowledge you gained from some new invention that you discovered, any patents working on. Oh, I love the sound of that. That right there with that space stuff that I showed earlier changes the dynamics of the cost of going into outer space big time. If you could even use some sort of an anti-gravity technology to lighten the payload and have whatever it is that's causing your anti-gravity to work underneath the floor of the payload to make the payload of the rocket semi-weightless. The cost of launch, I think the cost of launching one of Eli's rockets now is like $10 million. You could probably drop that down to $1 million if it had some anti-grav tech to it. Oh, you need to keep me informed when the company starts so we can invest in it there, buddy. I know they had the anti-gravity skateboard out on Back to the Future 2, I think it was, but the insurance companies wouldn't insure the toy company that wanted to make those skateboards. So the technology's been out there since the 80s. We'll talk more when I move down that way. Yeah, the hoverboard. The one they use in Back to the Future. That's an actual real invention. It actually worked at the time of the movie. So you can only imagine the amount of innovations and improvements made to that technology, for which Thomas Stoops knows a little bit about. And you could probably, again, even with a car, you want to get better gas mileage, stick some sort of an anti-gravity device on it that lessens the weight by 50%. Now your engine's not pushing 2,000 pounds, it's pushing 1,000 pounds. All of a sudden, all of your parts are going to last twice as long, and your gas mileage will probably double. It's all about weight. Same with boats. That's why they got hydrofoils on boats to get most of the hull out of the water for the drag. You know, it's the same with cars. The weight is the drag. Same with the rockets. The weight is the drag, along with the design. You have some aerodynamics and all of those, or aqua dynamics, but for the most part, it's the weight or the drag. You know. So if you can overcome that, and anti-gravity overcomes that, and even if you get just 10-20% changed by an anti-gravity device on any of those vehicles I just mentioned, would make them fucking 20 to 40% more efficient. Hey! Fuck that, Tom. You'd have the new Marine Corps fucking advanced team. You have to hook up with Raytheon and DARPA. They've got the Manta. It's like literally like the sea creature, the Manta, but it's a 34 by 34 foot autonomous submarine that you can launch, and it can sit at the bottom of wherever it's at in the oceans and wait there in dormant mode, saving its energy for years on end, preloaded with ordnance to where with the touch of a button could be activated. That scares the fuck out of all our enemies. That means if you bring your Navy out, you don't know if we'll destroy it before we even launch one of our fucking ships. We'll be able to destroy your ships, so therefore your Navy's now useless. Why attack us? Deterrent. Deterrents are the best way not to go to war. That's why I love the creation of the Space Force. Even if it's nothing more than a dog and pony show, it put a thought into the heads of our enemies, because we have the most crap out in space, and Reagan helped that psych work by talking about Star Wars, and now all these comic books and movies and whatnot are coming up with, oh, drop a tungsten rod, it's better than a nuclear missile. Well, shit, yeah, a tungsten rod costs like $500-600. Nuclear missile costs $600-700. But yet, if you launch it from space down to Earth, you get the same effect with no radiation, so you can occupy it as soon as you make that big hole. Or the oxygen torpedo. Have you ever heard of that one? Where it blows up underneath the center of a boat, creating a big oxygen bubble, devoiding that area of water. So therefore, the pressure of that boat starts going downward, and then instantaneously, water rushes into where that air bubble pocket was created, and it pushes up the center of that same part of that boat that was just bending downwards, now gets bent upwards. And in every trial they've used it on, it literally splits the freaking boat in half, no matter the size. The bigger, the better. It looks better. Called an oxygen bomb. We got those in the Mantis that I was just talking about. Let me rephrase that. The capability of putting them in there is there. They have the room to stick them in the Mantis. And those are some of the most devastating, non-long-term. It's not like a nuclear anything. There's no radiation. It's just it's an oxygen bomb. It works great for destroying submarines, ships, all kinds of stuff. It's also good for causing tsunamis. If you got a military buildup on a shoreline wanting to invade Taiwan, oddly enough, Taiwan, the facing side of Taiwan to China is mostly mountains. So if an oxygen bomb was exploded in the deepest part of the Taiwan Straits, the subsequent tsunami would devastate the Chinese shorelines and inward, to where it would hit the mountains of the shoreline of Taiwan and not do that much damage at all. So that's also a defensive tactic we have if they try to invade, if China tries to invade Taiwan. Yeah, I know, Thomas. I don't know. You said there was the Russians that were working on it. I don't know what the Americans' version is called. I've always known it as the oxygen bomb. It's like the Moab, mother of all bombs, but I don't know the acronym for the oxygen bomb. OB, BO, body odor. It's OB, other people's bomb. But anyhow, the Russians were also working on that nuclear-powered rocket engine I was just talking about, and I did a report on last year where they tested 4 of them. 3 of them blew up, and the 4th one was successful. And I believe I stated in my video that soon NASA would have a nuclear engine rocket and be working on it. And about 6 months to 8 months after that, I did a report saying that NASA now is working on a nuclear-powered rocket engine, showing that ever since World War II, America and Russia have been cooperating, no matter what, on a certain level, on a science sharing that's non-national security or weaponized type stuff. Science and medical and space technology, we've kind of been sharing a lot, keeping a lot secret as well, but sharing more so than you would imagine. 2 countries had a supposed Cold War for 40 years. And now, since the fall of the Berlin Wall and whatnot, that openness on different levels has opened up, even though politically and ideologically the 2 countries are somewhat different. But like that lady said with the Promethean Project, both want sovereignty to be respected and then to be looked at not as an adversary, but a sovereign nation that you deal with fairly and equally. And that's all that Russia wants. And the imperialist nations have not given them that. They treat them ever since the 1400s. The East Indies Company, owned by English imperialists, treated every country. As a matter of fact, they bought and sold countries. So Russia's been fighting them a lot longer than America because they've been around a lot longer than America. They didn't actually grab control of our financial system, in my personal opinion, until 1913 with the creation of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve and income tax, created the same year, and the ending of tariffs, which we used to run the country. So you can see at that level, the financial level, we quit having other countries pay for our country to run, and we came up with an organization that taxes its own people to get money to run the country, and we still do the world's bidding, but yet at the taxpayer's expense. In looking at it from that scenario, you can see where the imperialists are making and have been making a crap load of money off of us since 1913, because we funded our own nation at that point in time with income tax, and they controlled the financing of the nation because of the creation of the Fed, which caused the income tax. I bet they threw a party the day that happened. Never heard of the Pilgrim Society, Jay. Elaborate if you would. If not, no big deal. Or I could Google it. Pilgrim Society typically refers to 2 distinct organizations: a British-American honorary society founded in 1902 to foster goodwill and friendship between the 2 nations. Bingo! Yeah, you know about it, Jay. That's another issue I hadn't actually heard of, but yeah, it was like a warming up of relations so that they could get the Fed passed and income tax passed and tariffs stopped, so they quit paying for our nation. And we started paying for a nation, and they controlled the money from that control of our nation. And that is ending. That's why when I heard Trump say he was going to end income tax, I was like, oh, yeah, once you end income tax funds the Federal Reserve. Anytime you want to defund something, anytime you want to get rid of an organization, you defund it. To defund the Fed, you get rid of income tax. So when he said he wanted to get rid of the income tax and to go back to tariffing, it's going to end up in a couple of years after all this squabble's over with. It's going to be a 19% tariff mostly on every country because they're going to pay for the running of our country. And until the Federal Reserve was created, we created an army, we created a navy, paid for ships to be built, paid for 2 wars without an income tax and without a Federal Reserve. And like also, if you see, we're here for the whole duration of this program, the Promethean Project lady was talking about how they were working for a national bank to run things on our own, not under the LBMA control. And oh, by the way, let's not go there. I mentioned my very first video I ever did in my very first podcast. It was about CDBCs and how we'd never have one because the LBMA was up the creek without a paddle. And now everyone's finding out the LBMA is up creek without a paddle. You go to watch my first video. It says it. They were, and they would, and I said they wouldn't be ready for a CDBC till 2025, only if they wanted to get their crap together. And they have not wanted to get their crap together, so they're not ready for a CDBC. Not even close. They're getting ready for bankruptcy, and that right there will change the whole financial system. That's another reason for the digital economy being added to this economy, because once the LBMA goes bankrupt, if we have a digitally layered economy onto our economy, the effects of that bankruptcy will be lessened, in my opinion. But, like I said, go back 3 years to my first show. It was like June 6th or 8th, 2022. Almost 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. It's held up 100% factual. Not that I have a crystal ball. I just I see information, and I can make connections of that information, and it's to me, it seems easy to see. I actually am awed all the time that people don't see it. But then I got to understand I'm like a Jerry's kid. I'm special. I see things. I see dead people. I see things people don't see. I hear things people don't hear. I read between the lines and hear between the voices and get facts out of fantasy. I don't know. I don't know how it works. All I know is I see patterns and pathways, and they've been right because for the most part, you see a pattern or a pathway that's there for a reason and it'll continue. You just ride the wave and you should be good. And so far, that's held true. I don't know who makes the shit happen to where I can see these patterns and pathways, but they're always going to be there because people are always intermingling, trying to get things done for their own goodness and their own prosperity. And in doing so, it's like a fucking beaver in the water. It leaves a fucking wake. You can see it. It's a pattern. Oh, right on. Well, let's go ahead and advertise that one there a little bit. The American Intelligence Media on YouTube. Oh, yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Silver's talking to us right now. Actually, he's looking at Ginger saying, "Don't kick my ass, girl. I'm leaving." Those two don't get along. I know. Sometimes you bother me too with that little. He's half Siamese. He's got a messed up meow, in my opinion. I do not care for the Siamese meow, and he's got like a half Siamese meow. He's a sweet, loving thing, but man, that meow is annoying. I hope his kids don't have that. So far, they don't have that meow. They lost that. Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. Actually, the way you know a platinum squeeze is happening is wait till the big boys tell you. Don't listen to Neil, because I've been telling you for 2 years it was coming. and Rick Rule didn't even know what platinum was. He was like, "Oh, platinum, huh? Yeah, it's for catalytic converters." No, it's not, bro. And there's a lot more going on. And there's going to be a platinum squeeze, and I've been saying that for years. Saying it for years. Nobody wants to listen. Now it's happening. David Morgan, Rick Rule, they start talking about it. 100,000 views. Oh, well, I just found out there's a platinum squeeze on for... Yeah, you watched my show. You've had fucking 20 ounces by now, and you'd be celebrating. Oh, right on. Oh, tell her not to keep him unless she likes that meow, man. Get him spayed and neutered. God, that meow is... I don't know. Some people like that meow. That meow drives me nuts. Yeah. Get you up here so that people can see you. Let's see here. I'm going to show you one of the kittens because he's up here in my laps. Let's see. Virtual background. No, you staying up here. You're going on TV. You ain't going to jump down. There he is. That's... Which one are you? Your eyeballs. This is eyeballs. The reason why I call him eyeballs, he's got 2 eyeballs on his ass. His brother only has 1 spot right here, so I named him Spot. Silver is their dad. Silver looks a lot like this one. A lot like this one without the 2 spots on the back. He's a good boy, huh? And he's also got a spot right here. And then I got... I don't know if you can see it. That's Harley. That's Silver. That's this guy's dad. Don't walk away from your responsibility, son. See his tail? This guy's tail is the same. White with like a tabby tail and a tabby head. So you're a weird little guy, huh? I'm a weird little guy. Oh, right on. Yeah, that's what happens. Cats just they grow on you within like a couple days. Ain't that right? Yeah. And then they start asking for loving, and you can't help but give it to them because they're so sweet and cute and all this other shit. And then you gotta clean the kitty litter. Oh, it's not that bad. It's just another brick in the wall. Gotta love the kitties. Yes, I love the little kitties. Yeah. You should hear them at feeding time when I break out the tuna. Ooh, man, I got at least 13 of them will be around my feet. Meow, meow, meow. And they all got different tones. Sounds like a choir. Just a good babies. Yes, you is. Yeah, cats are cool. So what subject are we talking about again after this? Ooh, let's see. Lithium batteries. They're going out. I mean, they'll still be used, but they're not going to be the top seller. Companies are going to switch out for this other style of battery. I did a show on it. I don't recall what they're called. It's this guy. He already came out with it. They get like 1,000 miles per charge. Takes like 5 minutes to get up to 80%. So you could basically go halfway around across the country before you'd have to stop for like a 4-hour charge. And anytime you're driving, after 800 miles, you're stopping for the night anyhow. So that would be an electric car that could drive across country and not cost you extra time charging it every 4 hours. You want to know? Yeah, as early as 2, because OKLO just hired a contractor to build their very first micro nuclear reactor 2 or 3, well, maybe 5 days ago by the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. They've already approved the design for production, and they've hired Kiewit is the name of the company. It's actually worked for Kiewit, but they're going to build their micro nuclear reactor for them. They got to go ahead and sign the contract. Yes, device. So I imagine they want to put a rush on it because their stock price will jump through the roof once they actually turn one out. In 2 to 3 months before they actually turn it out, and they already have it sold. No, it'll be before 2030. It'll be this year. That nuclear reactor that they haven't, or micro nuclear, just got approval to build from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency about 5 days ago. They sold it, their first one that they haven't got built yet, to an Air Force base in Alaska. So they've already got a line of customers. So once that Air Force base in Alaska gets it, what you can anticipate is every that relies on fuel delivery will get micronuclear reactors because of the security threat. And someone stop that fuel delivery and compromise that base. If they have micronuclear, that won't happen. So for security and national security, on the planet will have micronuclear, but probably by the end of 2026. That's how fast it'll happen. And not only that, there's a lot of other companies that I haven't been doing reports on that are like Dream Switzerland is actually going through the Nuclear Regulatory Agency in Idaho's approval rating for their micronuclear reactor. Their specific design of micronuclear reactor power, which is maximum size for a micronuclear reactor, and produces 60 megawatts of cooling power, because they are specifically designing their micronuclear reactors to power huge data center processing centers or warehouses that can needs without pulling it from the grid. So that opens up more companies doing data centers for their personal energy and cooling needs, which makes them more efficient. Oh, AI is going to jump in that have they've used for some of the designs of the micronuclear reactors, but I haven't had I can't validate. But I know like iron workers a couple of years ago were using AI or Grok or whatever was at the time to help them put in bids for jobs, because it did a better job than they did, because it took like a week or two to put how many saw blades are you going to lose, how many pairs of gloves you're going to go through, how many sets of hard hats are you going to use, how many safety glasses are you going to use. You have to basically build the job in your head, go through all the material list, write it all down, double or triple it, and then put that in as a bid along with the man hours. And that takes like 2 to 3 weeks. Computer, the AI did that in like fucking 15 minutes. So guys real quickly said, well, I could either spend 2 weeks doing this or ask this AI to do it for me and program in all the prerequisites of the job. And it goes looking on the internet, figuring it out, comes back with a freaking list, and they put it in, they get the job. So there's been AI opinion sectors. That's where it's highly advantageous to know people in different industries, so you can get a feel for what's going on. Another thing I know, there has not it's built in the Bay Area for 5 years, because I have had a hard time getting a job for those 5 years because of COVID and everything else, money pooled, all this other bullshit. Before the end of this year, there's 2 high rises going in Berkeley, 2 16 stories. The economy's coming back. It just hasn't happened yet. Billions of dollars are flowing. They're flowing. But we're fixing to be just like the beginning part of this live stream. The guy from the National Building Council said, we're 100% behind you. We've been partnering with you for decades. Well, our union hall needs iron workers. So that what they're saying is work is coming back. Trades, and ironwork's one of the most depleted trades out there. So what's probably going to happen with ironwork is our next contract, which is in 2 years, will probably be like a $15, $20 an hour, just to entice people to come in to be an ironwork, to do ironwork and be iron workers. And I'll already be gone. These bastards won't be able to fucking benefit from my 30 years experience, because they've treated me like shit out here, because fucking the years. Well, 33 of them, I decided to be an iron worker. And by God, that's the fucking trade they were destroying. Now it's coming back, because we're destroying the imperialist, destroying our steel industry, which is my industry, my whole goddamn lifetime. So you can see where I've been interested in what's been going on for the past 30, 40 years. It directly affected no one else even give a fuck to talk about it, because ironwork. The future. That's why I say it's good to know people from different industries and hear what they're saying. All right, having said that, I've been going for an hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to cut this one off. Thank you very much for spending your Friday night with me. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will chit-chat with you later.